It's great privilege. For me, I'm one of the oldest friends, literally, physically, one of the oldest friends of Randy. I'm just 4 years younger than he is, which means that we were both there, which was an doubtful privilege to be there during the war, but we were there. And because he's a little bit older, he started, and already references were made to this, we started labor service at different times. He was drafted into the labor service in the fall of 1943 and escaped in December 1944. I was drafted only in June 1944 and escaped October 1944. My experiences my so-called suffering were very limited. I survived, like so many other Budapest fairly well-to-do assimilated Hungarians. I escaped and survived the Holocaust relatively easily. What is Randy's other very great advantages and achievement is that he both Hungarian and Romanian, that is at least his Romanian education, was born in Bucharest, and therefore he is able to compare these two countries, which from the point of view of the Holocaust were the most important after the Germans. If you consider that next to the Germans, the Hungarians and Romanians killed the greatest number of Jews, proportionally. But also, after the Germans, and now independently against the Germans, excluding the Germans, the Romanian, the Hungarian government spared the lives of the greatest number of Jews. So actually, Jewish survival in Romania and Hungary is, in European context, quite significant. The Romanian Antonescu regime killed about 300,000 Jews, many of them not Romanian citizens, but Soviet citizens, but killed them. The Hungarian regime exported 500,000 of its own Jews to the Germans, knowing full well that they would be killed. On the other hand, the Hungarian Horthy regime kept the Budapest Jews alive and kept them in conditions that were not unbearable, were very bad, but not unbearable. They didn't die in these star houses, and kept 150,000 labor servicemen alive. The Antonescu regime, on the other hand, having killed 300,000 Jews, protected fiercely the Jews of southern Transylvania, the end of the Regat of Wallachia, and did not surrender them to the Germans. So again, we have very, very exciting problems for historians to investigate, and what Brandy did so well, and what is his advantage, that of course he speaks both Romanian and Hungarian, and he could look at this from these angles. Now, if you come for 2 minutes of, post-war, the whole Central European society emerges from this conflict, from this terrible crisis, in total mental confusion. On the one hand, a feeling of guilt or the problem of that one should feel guilty, because, of course, the Hungarian people, by participating in the deportation, the Romanian soldiers who personally killed thousands and thousands of Jews, know that they had committed a crime. They must have known it themselves. They were all born with that knowledge that you are not allowed to kill and torture innocent people. On the other hand, they can console themselves with the thought that not all Jews were killed. We have more Jews than others. More Jews lived with us than in any other place. More Jews came back. The rumor in Hungary after 1945, more Jews come back from Auschwitz than we had deported. So that this contradictory feeling is governing Hungarian conscience. Plus, there is, of course, the guilt for having stolen everything that could be stolen for the Jews. And both Romanian Jews and Hungarian Jews were comparatively, in poor countries, comparatively very well off, thanks to your hard labor, to their talent, and everything else. Now was a great opportunity to take everything. Most of it is squandered, most of it is stolen from one another, most of it is ruined, the war ruins a lot. But basically that's what happens is a revolution, a revolutionary change, a complete transfer of property from one group to another, which by the way continues under the communists, the expropriation of other social classes, and a complete revolutionary change which occurs between 1944 in Hungary, starting with the Arrow Cross and finishing with Imre Nagy, more or less. So that's, to absorb all this, to understand all this is almost impossible. Intellectuals do. István Bibó did, many did, but many others didn't. And most, what is so tragic today, in my opinion, that those who are in power, not only they don't understand, they don't want to understand. They stick to some old ridiculous values, they dream about some past glory, and they tell the Hungarians that they should feel and happy, that they are strong, that they can defy America, they can defy anybody, they are not guilty of anything, and everything is fine. But everything is not fine, and we learn it how wrong they are. And last thing, let me say how grateful I am, or how respectful I am to Randy, that he gave back that medal to the Hungarians, because he told them with this gesture that one can no longer buy people with medals and recognitions. One has to do things. One cannot just play games with the Jews or any other minorities. But unfortunately, the Hungarian regime is far from having learned the lesson. Thank you very much.
And I'd like to ask Ivan Sanders, another professor at Columbia University who knows Randy very well, please. Ivan and I met at a Holocaust conference in Hungary in 2005, at which time I first met Randy also. Ivan.
Thank you. Well, don't worry, this is going to be brief. Because when I was asked to say a few words, and it will only be a few words, about Professor Braham and his life's work, I decided that I'll try to be very up-to-date and say something about his most recent scholarly activities. About a month and a half ago, I got an email from a Budapest friend, Anna Nemes, who is one of the best, if not the best, translator of English into Hungarian. She had been asked to translate a 50-page essay on recent scholarship on the Hungarian Holocaust, just completed by Randy Braham, and to be published in the Hungarian Jewish journal Múlt és Jövő, Past and Future. Anna Nemes knew that Professor Braham is a prominent historian. She was somewhat familiar with his chef-d'oeuvre, The Politics of Genocide, knew that he has lived in the States for many years, and knew, too, that he's no youngster. That was about all the information she had about him, but she wanted to know more. The next time we spoke at greater length on the telephone, and she learned that I knew Randy, she plied me with question. "Who is this remarkable man?" she asked in amazement. She couldn't get over the fact that Professor Braham perused the Hungarian text ever so meticulously, went over with it with an extra fine-tooth comb, spotted the tiniest slip and imprecision, and even quibbled over certain stylistic nuances. That surprised me a bit too, for I knew that while Randy had not one but two native languages, Hungarian and Romanian, he was most comfortable with English, but apparently his Hungarian is better than he lets on. Over the years, I contributed essays to a couple of volumes edited by Randy Braham, and learned that as an editor, he could be stern and demanding. I confess that sometimes when he called me on the telephone, I stiffened with fear, like when I was a kid and faced a strict teacher. At the same time, I always had enormous respect for Randy, for his untiring energy, and for the eagerness with which he embarks on new projects. I'm going to quote a typical passage in the introduction to one of the first bibliographies of the Hungarian Holocaust that Professor Braham compiled. And this is the sentence. A considerable number of publications listed are personal narratives, objective and relatively well-documented historical accounts of the Holocaust in general and of its individual facets are comparatively few, end quote. The implication of the sentence is, of course, that further research is needed. And sure enough, in later editions of the Holocaust bibliography, we find information about numerous new studies on the subject, studies often inspired by the editor himself. Before the fall of communism, relatively few people knew about Randolph Braham and his pioneering work inside Hungary. There were exceptions, of course. The sociologist András Kovács, for example, the historian László Karsai, and quite a few others who later became Randy's friends and, in a sense, his disciples. I remember that one of the first issues of the intellectual journal Books, spelled B-U-K-S-Z, the name is both a wordplay and an acronym for Budapesti Könyvszemle, Budapest Review of Books, a nod to the venerable New York Review of Books. At any rate, in one of the first issues of this highbrow journal, there was a long and laudatory article about Randolph Braham, even a drawing of him by a Hungarian David Levine. I thought then that with this piece, Randy won over the somewhat snobbish Budapest intelligentsia. And he did. He had arrived. The Politics of Genocide was first published in New York in 1981, as we heard. Hungarian readers had to wait 7 years until the first Hungarian edition of the two-volume work became available in Hungarian. The second definitive Hungarian edition was published in 1997. It's worth noting, though, that the monumental geographical encyclopedia of the Holocaust in Hungary, edited by Professor Braham with the collaboration of Zoltán Tibori Szabó, was first published in Budapest, in Hungarian, in 2007. The 3-volume American edition of the work was brought out by the Northwestern University Press 6 years later in 2013. And I'm pretty sure about this. Randolph L. Braham is not done yet, not by a long shot. As I indicated earlier, he recently finished a 50-page study on recent developments in Holocaust scholarship. And I'm sure that he has further plans and projects up his sleeve. What I admire most in Randy is his utter dedication to his main subject matter, his lucid, no-nonsense treatment of the subject, as well as his down-to-earth Menschlichkeit. The recognition you receive today, Randy, is therefore most appropriate. Thank you very much.
Menschlichkeit describes a kind of human being who does things without thinking about doing good things. It's just sort of like part of his nature. And the reason I established this Mensch Award, because this kind of human being, whether that human being should be Jewish or not, where this word Mensch fits in, has to be recognized. And I'm very proud to be here today. Came in from California. Actually, Randy was recognized as a Mensch in Budapest on September 26th, where 3 other very, very good people, Heller Agi, one of them. And Randy was not able to come to Budapest, so the mountain has to go to Mohammed. I don't want to get the Arabs into this whole thing. And I was actually here in October with my wife, and we visited Randy. and I'm very superstitious, and I really don't know what happens tomorrow. I know what happens now. I don't even know what happens 30 seconds from now. So this award, which we're going to give to Randy with the help of a Mensch director who lives in Connecticut and is a professor at Eastern Connecticut University, Cesar Beltran. I actually brought this to Randy's house. And he was going to play this game with me that I'm going to act like, well, I'll be surprised. You don't have to be surprised. I left it there not knowing whether I will be able to come back. So I did not want this to be just traveling with me to Palm Springs and then to Las Vegas and then to who knows where. And I said to Randy, I'm coming back soon, very, very soon, and this is now soon, and especially on your birthday tomorrow, and I'm the one that's honored to award you as Mensch, Mensch for all times, and Mensch for all seasons, as it says on this small little token. Cesar and Randy, could you please come up?
Gratulálok. You do the work.
If some of you might know Tamás Ungvári of Budapest, who was awarded last year, he dropped his. Oh. And we made another one for him, naturally. Randy, turn around. This is Cesar and I would sincerely like you to accept this. I hope you won't give this one back like you did everything to the Hungarians. And with our love and our admiration for you, you are a Mensch for all seasons.
Okay.
Toda rabá.
Thank you both very much for this honor. I thank you all for the nice talks. Paul Shapiro, István Deák, Ivan, all of you. I appreciate it. While listening to your talks, I don't know why I kept on thinking of the Alka-Seltzer commercial. Oh, what a relief it is. Why? Now I'm relieved that once I'm put in my coffin, I won't have to strain my ear to hear what people say. I'm also reminded, having listened to all this, to an anecdote some of you are familiar with. The head of a Jewish community is very proud of his rabbi and decides to offer a toast in his honor. At the banquet, he introduces his rabbi, saying, "You all know how saintly our rabbi is. You can almost see a halo around his head. Not only is he saintly, but he is very learned. He opens a page on the Bible. With a pin, he pierces a word and knows exactly which words were pierced on all subsequent pages. Not only that, not only is he saintly and learned, he's so judicious. When two litigants come to his court for a judgment, he renders such a just verdict that both litigants embrace each other and say, hallelujah. At that moment, the rabbi pulls his sleeve and says, don't forget to tell him how modest I am. Okay. Clearly, all of his speeches and all of his verbology related to my scholarship on the Holocaust. A subject that I confronted scientifically in the early 1950s after I got my doctorate in political science, a subject that I taught all my life, never taught Jewish subject or the Holocaust in class. It was a challenge to me. And that challenge was aroused by statistics. Early in the 1950s, I checked the numbers. 6 million European Jews, close to 600,000 Jews of Hungary. And then I looked at various sources and discovered that the total casualties suffered by American forces on all theaters of war was only, in quotation marks, 405,000. The Jews of Hungary alone lost close to 600,000, that is a third more than all American forces all over the world. Then, I was also astonished to realize that on June 6, 1944, when the largest armada ever was assembled under one command, stormed the beaches of Normandy. By the end of the day, 4,400 Allied troops were murdered. That same day, on June 6, 1944, 4 transports arrived in Auschwitz from northern Transylvania with approximately 12,000 victims. Of these, 9,000 were murdered, gassed, that same day. Almost twice as many. And while the Allied forces luckily suffered fewer and fewer casualties, the Jews of Hungary were subjected to the same mass gassing day after day from May 16 to July 9, 1944. I'm not going to use too many current statistics. You heard the president talk about the casualties incurred by America in Afghanistan during the last 12 years. Total 2,400 to this day. All of them are sacrifices that ought not to be committed. Yet, compared to 600,000, clearly it's a small level of casualty. Don't misunderstand me. They are all heroes in defense of our values. So at any rate, it was these statistics that induced me, after I got my doctorate in political science, is it possible to write about this abnormal situation in a scholarly manner, using the same methodology that I used in preparing my doctoral dissertation? I rejected all the lachrymose personal narratives that I read. In the course of time, covering I don't know how many pages of published and archival material, the books came out, The Politics of Genocide, and as Ivan mentioned, encyclopedias. I did my duty. I leave to you and the rest of the world to evaluate my contribution. It was my destiny in a way, my fate in a way. For you who are believers, it was the will of God in a way. For me to have been born, lived through the entire Nazi era, become a victim and a survivor. It was my fate to produce the documentation for that period. I'll end with a small story. Walking in Forest Hills one day, when I was in my 70s, I met my colleague, Raphael Patai. Some of you may know him. Tall, erect, highly published. He was in his mid-80s at that time. I was in my 70s. I asked him, Raphael, what's the secret of your life? The secret is, he said, you got to get involved in projects. The greater the project, the better. Yes. He died 3 months later. For all of you, you may think that I have more guts than brains. I confess, I'm currently working on the 3rd edition of both the Hungarian and the English version of the Politics of Genocide, close to 3,000 pages. I will not follow Rafael Patai's example. As a matter of fact, I look forward to meeting all of you
Next year.
in celebrating the 3rd edition. Thank you, all of you, for coming. Thank you, members of my immediate family. Thank you for all the speakers and all the best. And I like the camera to record the 2 generations, the 3rd generation. Okay, thank you for coming on there.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS, the Jewish Broadcasting Service, with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more, to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media. Simply visit the JBS homepage and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check made out to Jem, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.